Welcome to another episode of Infinite Nature Podcast. I'm your host, LaToya, and today I'm discussing knowing when someone is either a friend, lover, or client, the rescuer archetype explained. Hello, everyone. This is LaToya, and I am back with a new podcast. It has been about 2 years, almost 2 years, I think, or at least a year and a half since I last made a podcast. I started this podcast a little time after I had my daughter. I was probably like a few months postpartum, and I decided that I wanted to express myself and my creativity through the podcast. One, because it was easier. Number two, yes, because it was easier for the most part. I used to do my videos on, and I still do. But back then I had stopped making videos because I just had my daughter, and I wanted, like I said before, find an easier way to express myself without uh, feeling like I had to do a whole lot because I was learning to balance being a mother. So that's why I started to do the podcast. It's something that I wanted to do. But as you can see, I got caught up in life and being present as a mother and a wife and just a person and growing into my own, that forgot about my podcast, to be honest. But now that I've been getting in the groove of making videos again and sharing content again, I really wanted to get back into doing a podcast. And I won't be I'll be talking about a variety of topics as I've stated on my first episode. So it will still range from plant-based living, metaphysics, parenthood, and the list goes on. Um, but I also wanted to talk about, of course, personal development and also my personal journey and the things that I learned and the books that I read and all of that stuff. So today I wanted to focus on the rescuer archetype. And I've read a book already. It's called The Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. I always am not certain if I'm saying her last name right, but I love the book The Sacred Contracts. And in the book, you discover what your archetypes are, and we all have four, right? We have four that collectively we all share, like the victim archetype, the child archetype, the prostitute archetype, and the saboteur. So they're based upon what she has in her book. There's four main ones that we all have, and then there's the other eight is what we resonate with based upon, if you read a book and things like that and you figure out which one really resonates with your life. It's something that's a common theme in your life, right? So that book is a very interactive book. I have a lot of content on that on my YouTube channel, Infinite Nature. If you look at the book playlist, I have me going through the process of me reading the book and figuring out what my archetypes are and things of that nature. That book is amazing. It's really about shadow work. That really opened the door for shadow work for me for sure. And I really love that book. I love Caroline Myss's work. I'm just into that type of stuff. So, but one of the things that I've experienced even before reading that book is, as I was going through different relationships or had friendships and things, I've learned along the way that sometimes people who you think is supposed to be your friend or supposed to be your lover, they're really just supposed to be someone that is just a part of the journey of your journey, where they're just supposed to be someone that's part of your journey of you learning more about yourself. And in some cases, you may be a support system to them in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that you're supposed to be their friend and that or their lover, and sometimes I feel like we get caught up in that. And I wanted to read to you something that I wrote on my Instagram which is Infinite Nature number 1, because I have these tarot cards that I bought that are in relation to the books, the sacred contracts, and it has all of the archetypes. It has all of them, and you can pull cards. So what I'm doing is, you'll find that I'll have different posts about the different archetypes. So I know for a fact that the rescuer archetype is one of mine. And that's why I can speak so candidly about it. And what I have learned is, this is what I wrote on that post. What I have learned about the rescuer archetype is that I have to save myself first before I can be supportive to anyone else. What was constantly repeated in my 2-year personal development program, was that I am my very first client. This archetype guides us in remembering our intentions for doing things for others. I learned, especially in my 20s, to make sure I am doing things out of the goodness of my heart without assuming it will be reciprocated to me. This archetype is common in romantic relationships where one person acts as the helper to the one in need. This can happen in other relationships also. This is groundwork for codependency. As I began to really understand the power of the rescuer, I also realized that sometimes one may confuse a friendship or romantic relationship when you are really there to serve or support a person. Once I recognized that, my perspective shifted. People who have this as their archetype, from my perspective, probably do service type of work, counseling, coaching, or just naturally offer inspiration or support to those they come in contact with. So that's what I wrote about this rescuer archetype. And as I stated before, I deeply resonate with this archetype because this is one of the ones that I definitely identify with. And I remember, going through different experiences and being very frustrated that people just come in and out of my life. It just feels like that sometimes. And especially when I'm used to having a level of consistency. I feel like I'm a very consistent person. Now, my life path is a number 5 for people who are familiar with numerology. That's all about change and variety. I'm a Leo, which is the 5th zodiac sign. And I have a lot of 5 energy in my numerology chart, I guess you could say. That's the best way for me to explain that, the placements of my numerology, based upon my date of birth and my name and all of that. I have a lot of 5 energy or whatever. So I'm very into learning new things and experiencing new things and traveling. And I love, I love a variety. And even though I'm really good at things being like, I can be very, very skilled at doing things consistent, or just, I'm one of those people that can do one single task very well. Even though I may not like that, I do it very well. I crave for variety, which is one of the reasons why I left my 9 to 5, is because I realized that I will continuously be bored. No matter, I will excel and then be bored. But back to it, but I'm getting off topic. But one of the things I noticed is that, and I was like, what? But one of the things I realized is that despite the relationships ending, I noticed that there tend to be a shift with the people that I thought were my friends or thought was a lover. You know what I'm saying? So, that's just to put it. I don't want to go too deep into it, because this is still a podcast and I don't know who's listening, and this is something that I'll probably save to go into more detail in my Patreon, because I will be having a Patreon set up where people get more exclusive videos and things. When it comes to what I share, they get more exclusive information and get more of me in that way. But you have to, for Patreon, you do have to pay for that membership. But I will be having that where I'll be going more in detail. But I will say this, is that I found myself in situations to where it just seemed like, dag, it just seemed like constantly I'm always in a position to where I have to stand alone. Not in the sense of I'm married, so I'm not alone, but in this, I just always felt that way. But this even goes deeper when I talk about. There's another book that I want to go into detail about in another maybe podcast or maybe video, but I haven't finished it, so I don't want to talk about it completely. But there's a book called it didn't start with you, where it talks about how your family trauma, how we carry it, and how some of the things that we feel are not even our feelings, but we feel it. So I know part of that comes from that energy that, of being alone. And it's a very powerful healing book. I'm really getting a lot of healing from that. But I just always noticed that. And I just remember, especially in romantic relationships, just feeling that, wanting it to work and it just ain't gonna work. I just noticed that from past relationships. And the one that I was in, that was just a very life-changing experience for me, just to say the least. Before I met my husband, that really made me realize that you really have to be careful with, not being caught up in physical. You have to be very careful with creating boundaries with people and not giving your power away. And one of the things that I've learned about this rescuer archetype is that it's a very beautiful archetype when you are aware of it and when you learn how to create boundaries with people. But if you are constantly going in and out of friendships and relationships and not aware of it, it can be very frustrating, and it can make you want to create a wall and not want to trust people. You know what I'm saying? When it's really not about that. It's really about saving yourself first, loving on yourself first, filling yourself up with love, making sure you're doing things out of the goodness and the kindness of your heart, and not to get something in return, but really truly. And just knowing that we are all here as students and teachers, and that sometimes people come into your life for you to teach them. And that's not to make one higher than the other, because it's an exchange of energy. Really, you learn something from them and they learn something from you. But, that's just something that I really wanted to talk about, because I think that sometimes I just see so much happening between the male and relationships in general. I find that people get really bitter or really scorned, when in reality it's like, okay, you gave all your all to somebody in this relationship or this friendship, but are you drawn to people that seem like they need support and help, like really bad, or like they in some ways are broken? Are you really drawn to that? Like, what? It kind of reminds me of the Jada, and I didn't want to bring this up, but it kind of reminds me of the Jada and the August Alsina dynamics, like that. Two people who are in so much pain and trauma bonding together. Like, it's kind of like that, and it's like you have to really look at it from a very objective view to see that part of what drew y'all together is y'all have a similar pain that you have to learn to overcome through looking within, and not looking outside, but looking within yourself. So I don't want to make this too long, because I could go really into detail. Like I said before, I will be making more videos on my YouTube at Infinite Nature, and I will be having a Patreon set up where I will be having, more exclusive private things for people who that really enjoy my content and what I share and what I post. But you can connect with me on Instagram at Infinite Nature #1, Twitter Infinite Nature #1, Facebook Infinite Nature, and Tumblr at Infinite Nature. And I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Have a great day.